My name's Tim Middleton. I'm project manager with BookNet Canada. As well, I'm one of our retail liaisons, which means I get to talk to you today about BiblioShare and bookselling. So the plan is not to go heavy on Onyx standards. We have Tom Richardson to do that for the industry. He's sort of the guru of Onyx here and pretty much in Canada. But we will take a brief look at BookNet, my philosophy of metadata, a little bit about consumers, and an overview of BiblioShare. So BookNet Canada was established in December 2002 with funding from the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Canada Book Fund. It was called BiblioShare at that time. And our member organizations are both Canadian Publishers Associations, Bookseller and General Retail Associations, Wholesaler Associations, Public Library, Member-at-Large Indigo Books, and the government. And our stakeholders are their members. So our mandate is to collaboratively improve the supply chain for books in Canada by transforming information exchange, offering shared technology-focused solutions, and by providing technology and supply chain related education and research for the benefit of the Canadian book industry. To accomplish this, we work with publishing companies, booksellers, wholesalers, distributors, sales agents, industry associations, and libraries across the country. Whenever appropriate, BookNet looks to leverage partnerships with other organizations to provide benefits to the Canadian book industry. We continue to work closely with Canadian associations and industry groups with like-minded objectives, including the Book and Periodical Council, BATLF, Canada Council for the Arts, eBound Canada, Libre Canada Books, regional publishing associations, and many others. At the same time, BookNet continues to sit as an active member on international supply chain standards associations, including Editor, the Book Industry Study Group, Book Industry Communications, or BIC, the UK supply chain specialist, the International Digital Publishing Forum, and GS1, Canada International Supply Chain Standards Organization. Our product ecosystem essentially grows out of each other or each platform or each project that we're involved in, as indicated by this excellent flow chart that shows you EDI, standards sort of is at the root of everything, and then flowing into all of our other projects from there. And it's obvious that you can drill down into any one of these platforms and break out the relations. Like in book retail, the breakout could be considered print versus digital, but it could also be bricks and mortar versus e-commerce. So as mentioned today, we're going to focus a bit of attention on BiblioShare, which is really part of a supply chain story itself, a product of standards and technology that supports standards. When we start talking about BiblioShare, we right away start talking about metadata, which, as this terse definition states, is a set of data that describes and gives information about other data. And I find when I give this definition about metadata, I often have to go into a little more detail. So let me add a bit more by saying, because I'm a commuter and I work in publishing, I have started to think of metadata in terms of commuting. I use the train every day to get back and forth from work, like thousands of other people. And I don't have to think too much about the train and how it gets to where it's going. I get on the train, sit down, open my book, and before I know it, after a few stops, a few too many stops maybe, I get to my destination. What is the relationship to metadata? Well, the way the train is able to move seamlessly over the different terrains it needs to move from point A to point B is thanks to the tracks that are built to the right requirements so that trains can be built accordingly to ride on those tracks. Those tracks essentially turn the landscape into universal terrain. The tracks are like the standards that inform metadata. Metadata is a standard format. Metadata in a standard format like Onyx in the book world allows your books to move seamlessly across markets and into the hands of your writers, or I should say your readers. Now, nobody really pays attention to the tracks that the train is riding on. I mean, at least none of the people riding on the train. They notice the lack of seats, the closeness of their fellow passengers, where the bathrooms are, etc. But the tracks are out of mind, underneath, behind the scenes. They just work, and no one has to pay attention to them. Of course, when the tracks are out of commission, then people notice. Nothing is so serious as colliding trains in the book world with regards to metadata. No one's going to die because there are missing tags in their Onyx files. However, sales may be lost and jobs may be lost if the metadata is not of a good quality. But death, hopefully not. To milk my metaphor a little more, tracks are global. Train travel is global. You can go almost anywhere in the world and get on a train and know what to expect. However, there are slight variations in different parts of the world that allow different types of trains. Again, the connection to metadata here is that you have to be aware of what different markets require of your metadata. For instance, in North America, we are the great BISAC community. BISACs, as you are likely aware, are the categorization standards that get applied to books so that retailers are given a hint as to what the book is about and where they might stock it in their brick and mortar stores, as well as where it might end up in their categories on their websites. Amazon, Indigo, Book Manager websites, etc., will all use the BISACs to help in this construction of category navigation on their sites. However, in the UK and European countries, they use BIC. BIC is essentially the same thing, only different. The point of this point is that if you're selling into these markets, you need to know BIC and support BIC in your metadata. One of the great shifts that is happening right now is the application of thema coding for title categorization. Thema shows signs of becoming more and more useful in a global book market. Thema is where publishers should be concentrating a lot of effort right now in the North American market, applying it in a useful way to the subject areas of their title records. Thema is going to help bridge that gap between BISAC and BIC and other standards. It isn't replacing those, but it will act as a bridge. It's like a bridge that allows your train tracks to take you over death-defying valleys. The valley or river or market, in our example, cannot be crossed by a train, so a bridge needs to be built, and that bridge is thema. So I think that's enough of torturing the train metaphor, except for this one last note of comparison between trains and metadata. There are many stops along the way from point A to point B, and those stops could be compared to retail stops in the publishing world. The retailers that publishers are hoping to deal with to support in selling more books are their stops along the way to getting their books to readers. Wouldn't it be great if you knew how to assist all of those commuters waiting at those retail stops to make an easy entrance and exit with a book in their hands? Is that stretching the metaphor too far? Well, that's publishing, always torturing metaphors to make a point. So you may have noticed in those past slides, those were all different websites, and they were all using the metadata that is provided in publishers' records to populate their sites. Covers, titles, all of that. I'm going to talk about consumers a little bit. The ultimate goal of all publishing efforts, to get books into the hands of readers, or a less delicate label, consumers. BookNet conducts regular consumer surveys to help us figure out a number of things regarding book readers. One of the areas we focus on is how book buyers become aware of the books that they purchase. In our survey, which is representative of the Canadian population, the number one way that consumers become aware of a book that they purchase is while browsing in a shop, online or elsewhere. Assisting discoverability is the great quest of the book industry and metadata. The quality of a title's discoverability is assessed by how easy that title can be found. Can trading partners find your book? Can end customers who want to buy a book find your book? In today's world, for booksellers or librarians searching for titles to stock, or consumers searching on a website, the need for quality metadata is without a doubt mission critical. Metadata can inform the discovery of a specific title where the individual searching knows what they are looking for and needs to find the appropriate information or product record, or where an individual is using more general criteria to browse, then identify a title that meets their needs. Both of these qualities, the ease with which books can be discovered and the ease with which they can be traded, rely heavily on the provision of appropriate, accurate, and timely metadata. The highest percentage of browsing, according to our survey, shows that the physical bricks and mortar store is still the #1 place for discovery at around 45%. By far the highest discovery platform of any single choice within our survey. That's followed by e-retailers at 19.1%, then organic search at 9%. And after these, other website, review websites, social media, for a total of all the online browsing coming in at around 50%. So it's really a pretty even split between online, digital, and bricks and mortar. Recommendations and reviews, of course, are still huge awareness builders. When we asked where did the recommendation review come from, 37% said online, 40% in person, and then media, printed, TV, radio, traditional media came in at 10 or 11%. Social media use was mostly Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram were tied. Pinterest, also in there. And the highest book site, people said they use for reviews and recommendations was Goodreads by far. The big takeaways for marketing stuff from the reading data can help focus effort. We asked the readers to rank what influenced them the most in their selection. And it's interesting to note that with each of the highest influencers here, there is a direct correlation to metadata and what you can mark up in your Onyx records and send to your trading partners to support sales. And with that, I'd like to bring the focus to BiblioShare. BiblioShare is not a retailer. BookNet is not going to sell or market your book for you. But certainly part of the rationale for the existence of BookNet Canada is to help publishers overcome some of the friction that exists in the supply chain for the Canadian market. Also, by extension, we help the readers of those books overcome a different set of obstacles. How do we help? We help by advocating on the international stage for Canadian representation in metadata. We help by talking with and exploring with publishers, distributors, best practices for their product metadata. Let's take a look at some numbers in BiblioShare. Currently, we have over 2.5 million Onyx records and about 1.8 million images. That includes cover images, author images, and interiors. That's a lot of data and still lots of room for growth there. The infrastructure of BiblioShare is fairly basic. Onyx data comes into our data storage warehouse. We parse the data and provide back reports. We merge records that are submitted to us from both the publisher and the distributor, applying rules around which data elements to accept from which file, and hopefully provide an improved file, or at least a more transparent file, so that the publisher and their distributors can have a discussion about the state of information out there on their titles, on the publisher's titles. We also take in extra support material like samples and images and store that with the title record as well. We transfer that data nightly into a separate data warehouse where we can start to build out other platforms and services. One of the benefits of our inbound data processing is that we can provide back to the data senders quality reports so that they can see where they might be able to improve some areas of their data. The errors and warnings that we show are generated from our validation engine that uses rules developed according to best practices. While we only show you counts of the number of records affected by errors and warnings in the emailed reports, when you log in to your account in BiblioShare, you can see more detailed reports. The same errors and warnings appear as in the quality report that was emailed to you, but now you can sort these tables by any of the column headers. In this instance, our user is sorted by type, so the errors appear all together. Then by clicking on the EAN, you can go directly to the title in question to look at the details of your Onyx record. And there you can make a temporary fix to the field that will update our outbound record until you're able to make the fix at your Onyx source. However, if the Onyx isn't fixed the next time you load the data, your quality report will remind you of the error. BiblioShare was built because the industry in Canada was looking for a service that could provide a repository of Canadian-focused metadata. Building this is not a trivial enterprise. Many ships have been sunk against the shores of Onyx standards. I wouldn't say BiblioShare is not without its waves that can rock the ship. Okay, I'm not going to start using this metaphor. I should stick with trains, but you know what I'm saying, I hope. If not, what I'm saying is that the Onyx standard can be big and messy. Creating and storing Onyx data can be a strange and complicated trip. The fact that BiblioShare is available means that other platforms can be developed, like the ACP's 49th shelf, a discovery platform for Canadian authored books that uses that Canadian author marker from our bibliographic metadata in BiblioShare. And we'll provide accurate metadata, or the most accurate current metadata, and help the industry even further without worrying about all the infrastructure and problems around processing the full market of Onyx data. We've also provided ways for smaller businesses who can't afford the big enterprise Onyx solutions to participate. BiblioShare Web Form is our online web form that is an easy-to-use tool that allows small operations to create and manage book metadata without messing around with the complex Onyx files. BiblioShare Web Form is for small presses, unconventional publishers, museums, universities, self-published authors. In short, anyone who wants to provide clean, accurate metadata about their books to the supply chain through BiblioShare, but doesn't have the resources to create complex Onyx files from scratch. Web services are another output from our metadata. Our APIs are available for free to anybody with a token. So you request a token from us and you have access to either an Onyx 2.1 or Onyx 3.0 web service. Our BiblioSimple web service, which is basically an Onyx Lite kind of service. We return just a few fields. We roll up a lot of the Onyx data into those fields. We also have a MARC record. So MARC is the standard that the library industry uses for their metadata. And we've used the OCLC mapping from Onyx to MARC to provide those records for the library services. And then you can get samples, image info, image lists, and of course, images. Our web service analytics for the fiscal 2017 shows that the data is definitely getting used. These are some big numbers, or at least there's some big numbers like 65 million image info requests, but they could get bigger. And I will point out the small number of MARC record requests only to say that this service is also used in Catalyst for library systems, but we don't track that through our web services. So libraries can create a MARC stub record to start their cataloging purposes when they're exporting their orders from Catalyst. Our latest focus is on our samples and excerpts service. So we've been trying to ramp this service up. This is where we would like publishers to really start to focus some attention by providing us with collateral for samples of their books, excerpts of their books, readers' guides, and table of contents. The service is already live for users to pull EPUBs and PDFs of sample data, but we will continue to build this out and continue to request this from the industry. The web service metrics don't capture all the data we provide because some of the data we provide is in custom formats to users, custom extracts for wholesalers and other service providers that aren't really able to provide or aren't really able to handle Onyx. So we're able to provide data from Onyx to those vendors that need it, to retailers or wholesalers or anyone, in a format that they require. We built BiblioShare, and as a result, we were able to build the business-to-business platform, B&C Catalyst. Catalyst could be built to support sales between partners. The visibility of the data is a great incentive to both sides of the platform, because really what you're seeing in Catalyst is right out of BiblioShare and easily fixed by publishers fixing it at their source. This is what they call eating your own dog food. So we eat our own dog food in Catalyst. And thanks to Catalyst, Lone Stars could be born or given birth to. Lone Stars is a reader's advisory platform for librarians who can vote on what forthcoming titles they're most excited about. So they rank and then create lists of what they're excited about seeing. And this partnership creates kind of a virtuous cycle for us by then sending users, librarians in this case, back to Catalyst to show them the new releases coming up and that are eligible for voting. It's a pretty wonderful service, actually, and we've had lots of uptake from it. We also have available our Chrome plugin, Bibliomatic. This is easily installed and recognizes any ISBN on the open web and allows you to see the metadata on that title. So there's links to the actual raw Onyx record that is coming out of our outbound databases. And if you're a sales data user subscriber, there's a link to the title detail page in sales data. And then if the book is in Catalyst, you can also go and look at that record in Catalyst. But what people have really found useful in Bibliomatic is our display of the keywords subject information that we're showing here. And this really educates the industry again to see what some of the best practices are. So if you have your favorite keyword provider, publisher, you can check their titles and see what keywords they're using. And we've also had a sample of a release calendar prototype for a while. So this is something that's actually, we do have a couple people using, but it's not widely used. We built it basically as a proof of concept. And in this instance, we wrapped some CSS around it to show that you could design this service any way that you like. In the release calendar, you can apply all kinds of parameters. You can throw a subscriber list at it or a publisher list at it. You can put date ranges on it. You can pull back just Canadian content. You can pull back subjects, any subjects, focus in on subjects. So this is, I'm pretty excited about this service, and I would like to see more people using it, and I'd like to see more design around it. This would be easy to embed on all kinds of web assets. And so if you're interested, let us know. Another area we can work with are the so-called digitally native POS systems. These are really the new POS systems that are coming out, and they have a bit more openness about them, enabling product support through APIs. So as an example, Shopify is one of these new POS systems. Tobias Lütke, who's the founder and CEO of Shopify, has stated numerous times the reason he got involved in creating Shopify in the first place. He had an online snowboard shop. I guess he was trying to pay his way through programming school. He wasn't happy with the software that was available to him, so he wrote his own e-commerce platform, and that's been hugely successful. We have created a plugin for that, and I'll mention that a little bit later on. But opportunities like this enable lots of types of retailers, not just traditional booksellers and not your typical retail stores, anybody can get Shopify, and regardless of their experience with metadata and with product information, they can all of a sudden populate that stuff very quickly. The openness of the platform makes it pretty easy to work with, and we'd like to do more plugins for other platforms. But alas, every product requires support and resources, and well, we're a not-for-profit. So, baby steps. In Shopify, so this is a screenshot of the admin backend of Shopify, and all we need once the plugin is installed, all we need from the retailer is for them to either copy and paste an identifier in or do a bulk import of that unique identifier, very important, save it, and just like that, they're ready to sell that title at an event or a book club or at a book fair or at a farmer's market or wherever. And of course, again, in the back end of Shopify, they're enabled to use all kinds of analytics and customer tracking and all the goodness. So I'm going to start to wrap up here. And as I wrap up, I'd like to think a bit more about where good data practices might start. And for one, and a relatively major one, timeliness of book data. Data should be supplied, and this according to best practices, at least 180 days prior to the on-sale date of a product. The buying cycles in place at most resellers of book products require data this far in advance in order to ensure that products are ordered on schedule. Also, data should be updated as it changes. Book metadata should never sleep. The marketplace is dynamic, and so should your metadata be. Don't set it and forget it. Otherwise, retailers and consumers won't trust what they see. They'll be confused. And we all know that the book should have a title, an author, product form details. And before you know it, you're swimming in the possibilities of metadata. Should you add the title with and without prefix elements to your record? Should I include person name and person name inverted? Some of these questions can only be answered by you and your trading partner. As our BookNet Canada bibliographic manager, Tom Richardson, likes to say, doing it right means providing what your trading partner requires. The supply detail, for instance. Here we see a supply detail for a title in BiblioShare that clearly states where this supplier can supply the title, what the returns information is, what the availability of the title is, what the pack quantity is, and more. Pretty helpful for a retail purchaser and just what your retail partners need to know. Oh, and don't forget, our latest consumer research shows that series is one of the main reasons for book purchases. So let's get that right. Here I'm going to say that the migration to Onyx 3.0 will greatly facilitate this piece of information with clarity and scope. This is a screenshot for series data in 2.1. The series and sets, collections and sets piece of 3.0 is a lot more detailed and a lot easier, a lot clearer about what you can do. But you can still get a lot of clarity by using the series data properly in 2.1. And again, doing it right in 2.1, following the best practices in 2.1, positions you very, very strongly for your migration to 3.0. So I'm going to point you towards this document that can be found online if you haven't already seen it and read it from cover to cover and numerous times. This best practices for product metadata. And the paper was co-published by the BISG and BookNet Canada and includes invaluable information for anyone wanting to provide data in the best of all possible lights. One of the things that get mentioned in this document are keywords. So speaking of best practices, keywords are another area that publishers should really be putting some effort into. The BISG just released their revised best practices document, so I would encourage you to download that when you get a chance. I'm almost done, but before I finish, I wanted to highlight from this 2016 study that Nielsen did, a really interesting study that looked at the influence of metadata on sales, the role that they found keywords played. Nielsen found that titles with keywords added outsold titles where no keywords were added. Fiction, nonfiction, and juvenile titles all saw better sales when their Onyx record contained keywords. And even though some titles had descriptive elements already added, which helped boost sales initially, these same descriptive elements plus keywords helped even more. So in summary, the Nielsen study found that titles carrying the full complement of basic data elements and a cover image see average sales per ISBN 75% higher than those which do not hold this complete data. The presence of a cover image alone correlates with average sales 51% higher than titles which do not hold a cover image. Really important to get your cover image out into the supply chain. The presence of descriptive data elements on title records correlates with higher average sales. Titles holding the 3 descriptive elements examined saw average sales 72% higher than those with no descriptive data attached. The addition of keywords shows a correlation with higher sales again, compared to those titles which hold all 3 descriptive data elements. Those that also carry keywords see average sales 28% higher. So that's it for today. But before I finish, I will just leave you with a summary of some of the value that the industry, retailers, wholesalers, publishers, libraries, and more sees in BiblioShare. Our data set's growing. We have a focus on the Canadian supply chain. We're actually the main source of Canadian bibliographic data. It's a source of print and digital metadata. It integrates with other companies' products, like Check It Out, 49th Shelf, all lit up. We provide detailed feedback to data suppliers. We're the Canadian authority on Onyx. Publishers have improved data because of quality reporting. Ability of BiblioShare to support biblio audits with publishers allows us to have a conversation about properly structured metadata with Canadian publishers. So big emphasis on education. Ability to research a bibliographic landscape for Canada, for instance, keywords. We can audit the bibliographic data and slice and dice it in ways to see what the usage is like. We merge that supplier info, which is very important to make that transparent to the publishers, and the flexibility of the outbound services and the web services. As a final remark, I will say we are excited to see Onyx 3.0 data growing. We're not there yet. Nobody is actually ingesting 3.0. People are starting to use 3.0. Kobo, I believe, accepts 3.0. No major retailer is using 3.0. So we're still really well positioned to migrate from 2.1 to 3.0. You can hear more about this at our tech forum if you're coming, from Tricia McCraney, who will be talking about the benefits of 3.0 data. Or you can call and discuss with Tom Richardson.